this directs me and my family directly, this administration, in ways that I won't get into, but it's like very stressful, and it's like a nightmare sometimes. I feel really horrible for people that are in my family that are directly impacted by this administration and have to like think about things that I don't. And I'm not ignoring any of that. All of that matters, and it needs to be addressed. I'm not saying like, oh, just sit back and just win the midterms. It's obviously not going to be that simple. But when I look at how far this country has come, I feel good about our chances. And I take a look at things like, I think social media is, and this is just beating a dead horse because this has been just talked about ad nauseum, but I think social media and the corporate media have given Americans like a false sense of like where things are at right now. Because when I look at the state of like the religious right, yes, they're entrenched in power right now after the 2024 elections. That is going to change in 2026, and I do feel optimistic about 2028. But apart from that, which matters, church attendance is down. Like explicit kind of racist, Nazi adjacent attitudes are down. Opposition to more immigrants coming into the country has just been it peaked right after 9/11 at 55% in 2002, and it's just been trending down ever since. So it doesn't feel that way because the American voters, they gave Republicans control of the Congress, and they gave Donald Trump the presidency again. But support for more immigration has been going up now for several years. Support for immigration levels staying at the same rate, which is to say, like, that's a pro-immigration position because you want immigrants coming into the country. That has been slowly going up. And support for less immigration is trending down. And so I look at the state of things, and I think what we're seeing right now is, I don't want to jinx it and say it's like the death rattles of this really ugly kind of lingering remnant of pre-civil rights era in the United States. I don't want to make that bold of a proclamation, but they are losing this fight. They know they're losing this fight, and that's why their movement is as unhinged as it is.
Sure, I don't disagree with you in the short term for now, but like you asked over the last 50 years, over the last 100 years, after the last 200 years, what do you think about over like the last 20 years?
I'd say we were, well, that's a little different. Well, even then, yes. I like in so many ways, the country I think has moved in a really good direction. Like we went from like a really lackluster stimulus program during the Great Recession that did not go far enough, and lo and behold, the government seems to have learned their lesson, and they had a much better program this time around following the pandemic. And so I think our policies have gotten better. I think of like, there's a lot of anti-trans hysteria that's happened in this country right now, but there's no question that in the 21st century, attitudes out there in the culture and the zeitgeist about LGBTQ plus people and acceptance of these kinds of people in, society, just living publicly, authentically who they are, that is unquestionably moved in the right direction. And I think once we get past this moment, I think that we'll see movement move more in the direction of progress in that kind of way, while maybe like avoiding some of the trappings of like overly woke kind of language policing and that kind of thing. But yeah, there's no question, and when I look at like, there's all kinds of like metrics that I could look at. I mean, I take your point that right now with Trump in power, I mean, this is that's a hell of a backslide, but I'm not as hopeless as you are that the American voters will make better decisions in the future.
To be clear, I'm not hopeless. I'm trying to think of like what course corrects, because I agree that there are social issues that we have made progress on. I agree that
a lot of progress, Destiny. Like a lot. You're old enough to remember just how like open homophobia was just completely normal in pop culture and movies and shows. And,
in the past 20, 30 years, yeah, for sure. But I mean, like we backslid hard on like abortion stuff, right? Is it like 20 some states? I don't know how many states right now. You've got 6 weeks basically, which is basically an abortion ban. You've got some states that are trying to extradite citizens from other states just for prescribing abortion medication. That was a pretty big backslide. You've got like these weird porn ban ID requirements now in a lot of conservative states that I think is kind of strange. When it comes to people attending church or not, I don't know like I want to agree with you. I would say that should be pretty self-evidently obvious that it's getting people away from religious fervor if they're not attending the church. Don't know 100% how true that might be, though. I think evangelicals are the largest, because I know that there are Catholics, my parents, unfortunately, are part of this, who got turned off from Catholic Church-related stuff because they felt like the popes were too woke, as stupid as that is, especially, I think, the last one. But I can't imagine that that's tracking, like, widespread lack of church attendance. When I look at, like, institutional damage, I also worry sometimes that there might be, like, a bit of inertia in terms of a backslide, but, like, once that inertia is overcome, you start to see huge damage really fast. So, for instance, this president, in the course of a couple months, just got rid of, like, USAID and the Department of Education. That's not coming back in the next presidential administration. I don't think so.
I think it will. If it's a Democrat, I think it will.
You think they're going to reinstate the Department of Education?
Yes. And I think they'll restart USAID. Yeah, I do. I think they'll run on that too.
Oh, I seriously doubt it. Maybe DOE stuff, maybe, but running on US, unfortunately, I just don't think a lot of Americans care enough to make that like an electoral issue. But I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong on that. Maybe. I hope that you're like bragging to me about how stupid I was to assume that Americans don't give a fuck about other people, especially darker skinned people around the world. I hope I'm wrong on that. But I would be surprised, really, if USAID even comes up much other than like a quick yap talking point. I just think there's going to be so much other stuff politically that Democrats are going to want to do that sending political capital on that is going to be prohibitive.
I mean, if I, use your own logic, then I don't think it's going to matter too much because this was like pennies on the dollar in terms of our investment. I think the next Democratic administration will bring it back because it was good policy that benefits America in numerous ways. And sets
but I don't even know if the average American thinks that.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, I think maybe I agree with you that maybe they shouldn't run on it because there's a lot of like isolationism going on in America right now. But I do think they will reinstate it because it is just like unquestionably good policy, like really good foreign policy that bears fruit in a lot of different ways. So
sure,
it's just.
I also think that another issue too is that like it's easier to tear it down than it is to reinstate it because it was what was USA like? Was it a $50 billion annual budget?
I don't even know if it was 50 billion, but it might have been. Hold on.
So that's going to be an issue that when we go to fight about it, like I imagine that like the single most important thing, I think one of the most important things we can do just from a policy perspective, and this is already unpopular, I don't even think Democrats will do it, is we have to get rid of the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's got to go. All those tax cuts have to be rolled the fuck back because our current government is unsustainable, and that was just an unbelievably ridiculous. What is this? Like $400 or $500 billion a year in terms of fucking revenue, just unbelievable revenue lost to the government. It's just unfathomable. But like that, what I just said right there, I think that would be like maybe an election losing issue for Democrats to run on tax hikes. I don't know if they can find a way to message that or not, especially because the people who generally want to talk about raising taxes are further left, and they're all obsessed with like wealth taxes and billionaire taxes, which are untenable for a number of reasons. But for the most importantly, even if you passed all these, the revenue raise is going to be an order of magnitude less than just rolling back the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So the idea that we would bring back USAID, there's going to be another $50 billion a year. There's no way we're going to do tax raises because people are just going to be asking about it. And then I don't know. I guess I have a really low.
Hey, listen, we'll get to the policy discussions when we get closer to the presidential election. We can have these kind of conversations right now in a just a masturbatory sense of just like whatever, just for our own pleasure, have these kinds of like theoretical conversations about this policy or that policy. But the truth is like about a year from now, most of the candidates are going to start announcing. I do think the candidates are going to start announcing earlier now. And so I think, in about a year, then we can start having these debates about policy and just cross that bridge when you get there.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm only bringing that up. I'm only bringing that up because it's like, if like our conversations about that are going to be fierce, okay? And it's going to be a real big deal back and forth on how we feel about things like the Department of Education and USAID. For the Republican administration, it was an executive order and it was gone. It was a nothing thing. There was no political cut. They just did it and it was done. And that's what I mean when I say like the inertia. Like once they're in a position to start fucking with shit, they can fuck with it.